Thank you. Do you hear me? Yes? No? Yes? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. And I thank the kind folks at Saltmarsh for inviting me to give this talk. I'm going to talk quite a bit about some of the concerns we have as software developers and how we could become better programmers, better software developers. A quick show of hands. How many of you are programmers? All right, that's great. I'm in the right place. How many of you are testers? All right. How many of you manage projects? And how many of you will not raise your hand no matter what I ask? There you go. There's one guy. Okay, cool. Excellent. All right. I need one person to help me. Who wants to help me here? Come on. Be brave. Who's going to come and help me? You come on. Let's do that. Thank you. So we're going to talk about software development. We're going to talk about a number of things that we have to do on a daily basis. He's going to hook you up with a camera, a microphone. There you go, right there. So let's talk about software development. How does it feel to develop software? Think about that for a minute. You guys develop, we got room full of programmers here, right? How does it feel when you write code? Have you thought about that? You all go to work and you code away every day, right? So what is software development like? That's what I want you to think about for the next couple of minutes. Hello there. It's a pleasure to see you. What's your name?
Ganesh Radhakrishna.
Ganesh, where are you from?
I'm from Bangalore.
Okay, this is Ganesh from Bangalore. I've known him for about 30 seconds now, and I feel like a friend already. Excellent. So you're going to help me. I'm going to ask you a lot of hard questions, and thanks for being the victim. I'm a volunteer. Okay. You can ask their help if you want to, but you're going to answer all the questions. Fair enough?
Sure, I'll try.
All right, that's the spirit. Excellent. So what does it feel like, software development? What does it feel like for you when you develop software?
Software development is something like puzzle solving for me.
There you go. What an awesome answer, right? It's like a puzzle solving. So here's my answer. It feels like this to me. It feels like surfing to me, right? Why does it feel like surfing to me? There's a number of reasons. Anybody who surfs here? No? I can say anything I want about it then. Excellent. So you don't go to surfing saying, I'm going to exactly know what the waves are. Do you ever do that? Exactly how many waves there will be, what the height of the waves will be? No. It's extremely unpredictable. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, he's good. He agrees with me today. What else? It's very dynamic. We don't have a clue how the weather is going to change. And once you go surfing, things change. It certainly has an influence. The locale has an influence. But a lot of things change. It's dynamic. And it's a lot of fun. Say, hey, wait a second. Did I say fun? I was in a company. I was talking to a group of folks, and one of the guys said, yeah, I show up to work, but I wouldn't call it fun. Well, I'll tell you, you spend most of your awake time every day, every week, where? At work. And if work is not fun, what are you doing? So it's got to be a lot of fun. If work is not having fun, you're likely holding on to a stinking job than being in a pursuit of passion that you need to really go after. So I hope you guys are here because you care about your profession. You want to be programmers not because they pay you. Yeah, it's important they pay, right? But I don't think you're a programmer because anybody here a programmer here just because you pay? They pay you? Anybody? No, right? I don't get excited when they pay me. You know why? Because when they pay me, half the money my wife takes. The other half the government takes. What am I left with? So I'm really doing this because I have fun doing it. Otherwise, why would I be doing this, right? So it's got to be fun. It's got to be passion to do it. So it's fun, all right, but there are challenges. Would you think so? There's challenges all the day. You go to work. There are problems we have to face. So tell me, what's going on? We got to deal with sharks, just like in surfing. There are sharks. Have you seen sharks at work?
At work?
Yeah.
Not the real sharks.
Well, who are your sharks at work? Come on, tell me. Well, we'll promise. What goes on here stays here, right? Yes, okay, come on, tell me.
I mean, okay, if you're talking about comparing sharks with people.
It's your boss. That's what when he's long-winded, that's what he's saying.
He's not here anyway.
He's not here. That's even convenient, right? Yeah, the boss is the shark. There's always this boss we have to deal with, right? The customers are sometimes.
Oh, yeah, of course, yes.
If they don't have the money, we won't deal with them, right? So they're sharks. So we got to deal with these sharks all the time, and that is something we got to put up with. But what affects you the most in your work? Is it the language that affects you the most? Is it the compiler that bothers you the most? Is it the framework? Is it the IDE? Is it the tool? What do you think?
All of them.
All of them. I think it is this that bothers us the most, don't you think? It's you. It's me. It's everybody here. We the people. And if your software project succeeds, it's because of your people. If your software projects fail, it's because of your people, right? People make the difference. Tools are only secondary. Languages are only secondary. It is what we do that makes the huge difference, right? People make the ton of difference in what we do. So I was on Twitter a few months ago, and I asked this question. Name 3 things that help your organization to win. And within minutes, I got an answer. The first answer I got was from my good friend Scott. No, that's not what I had in mind. So give him a hard time when you see him today, will you? Right? So what I really had in mind is this. People who are passionate, competent, and responsible. All these 3 things I think are the most important. Would you agree? He's thinking. Let's let him think a little bit. Absolutely, right? Why? Because if I don't have the real passion, it's very hard to manage in our field. You're sitting there and writing program and getting the computer to work is worse than getting a 3-year-old to listen. Right? You're sitting there and writing code. You go to work because you believe in this. You love what you do. But passion alone is not important. Why? Because you're passionate, all right, but you got to be really good at what you do. If you're really not good at what you do, you could have the desire to do it, but you're not going to be really excellent with it. You got to be competent. But competency is not enough either. You could be extremely competent, but you just don't care to do stuff. You're not responsible. You're not dependable. So responsibility is extremely important. It is not one of these 3 I think is important. It's got to be a collection of all these 3 that's very important for a team to succeed. That's very critical. So excellence always exists in the presence of errors, but never in the absence of passion. What a beautiful quote that is. And so passion is something extremely important. And if your passion is not in software development, you should leave. And go pursue that passion, whatever that is. And that is the beauty of this world, is what you are passionate about is not the same as everybody else in this world is. And you can go after your passion while they go after theirs, and that is extremely important for us to do. So, but we all have to deal with fallacies all the time, right? You do that, right? You go to work, you know exactly what to do, but there are these sharks around you that don't listen to you, right? That happens, right? He's a wise man, he knows it. So, what's a fallacy? A fallacy is a mistaken belief. I'm sure you're sitting there in a meeting, and they're telling you something, you're nodding your head. It's like, no, you got it wrong. That's not true, right? And they go on and on. It's a fallacy. And it's something that's based on some unsound arguments. And we see fallacies, hear fallacies all the time. So what are some of the fallacies we have to deal with? Oh, it reminds me. It's like, hey, wait a minute. This is about pointy here bosses. We didn't talk about bosses. Well, I'm not going to talk about bosses because it's really not bosses that we have to report to. A lot of times the boss is within us. We have to respond to our thoughts, our actions, our motives. But it's always fun to really talk about bosses though, right? So let's talk a little bit about bosses. So here's a pointy-haired boss, and our nice friend says, we need 3 more programmers. What does the boss say? Use agile programming methods. Right? You heard that, right? Yeah. So this guy says, but agile programming doesn't just mean doing more work with fewer people. And the boss says, so we have to deal with all these things every day, right? So where do fallacies come from? They got to come from somewhere. That's a fallacy, right? This is what we hear. Nobody survived the project. How did you hear about that, right? So we hear about this all the time. So this is two words that bother me the most. Have you heard those two words?
Best practice.
Yep, you heard that, right?
Of course, yes.
Has anybody told you that today, this morning?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Today, not yet.
Not yet.
Lucky day so far.
Yeah, sir.
Let's keep it that way, right? I hate best practices. Why do I hate best practices? If somebody wants to really tick me off and make me angry, then please don't do this today. Come to me and say, what are some of the best practices? That's it. You have ticked me off. When people ask what are the best practices, what they're telling you is, I don't want to think. Give me a checklist. I'm going to say, yep, we follow the best practices. Hey, should I jump out of the third floor? No, that's not a best practice. Okay, what do I do about this fire in the room? What are you waiting for? The point is, what practices we follow based on context. Without a context, it makes no sense to follow a certain select set of practices. So there are better practices and there are bad practices, but there just simply are no best practices. I love it when people play music when I say the right things. Thank you. So best practices, there's none. Don't ask for them. Don't follow that. That's a bad idea. So you're under the influence all the time. Do you get influenced? Let me rephrase the question. Are you married?
Yes.
You are influenced. Okay. So
You got it right.
we are all influenced, right? And what do we get influenced with? We're influenced by people. Something is wrong with the slides, but you're able to see it, right? We're influenced by the people, and we're influenced by practices. And this is the problem, because when I sit down, when I start thinking, I cannot think straight because I am under the influence. Do you agree?
Yes.
You go home with a clear mind, you sit down on that sofa, and that's it. You're under the influence, right?
Okay, should I answer that?
Well, no, that's a rhetorical question.
Okay.
If you answer it, you're in trouble tonight. You don't want to do that. Yes. Okay. So what influences people? One of the biggest problems we have to deal with is this. We have a strong tendency to conform. We have to conform. Do you feel that anytime? If there are 20 guys around you, you want to look like them. You want to do things like them. You feel really under pressure if you're a little different, right? This happens quite a bit. Well, here are a couple of things to think about.
We have a look here.
The audio is not good here.
He is my understudy. Fairana.
Narasimharao, sir.
Telagappa.
ಇಲ್ಲ sir, ಕನ್ನಡಿಗ.
ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ.
Erase the audio for me.
me.
So that's a conformance. I don't know if you've seen that movie. That just tickles me when I watch that. We're all like that, right? We want to be conformant. I want you to answer this question. Ganesh, right?
Yes.
Ganesh from Bangalore. Which of these three lines is similar to the line on the left?
In what way?
In the size.
In the length?
Yeah, in the length.
Second one.
Second one. See, I told you he's smart. I want you to watch this, but when you watch it, look at the face of the third guy in this video. This is called the Ash experiment.
The correct answer is 2.
The audio is pretty bad.
1.
Let's see if we can try this. Pardon me.
1.
Could you help me with that?
Once again, the correct answer is 2.
We have a look here.
He is my understudy.
Sorry about the trouble here.
Fairana.
ನರಸಿಂಹರಾವ್, sir.
Telagappa.
ಇಲ್ಲ sir.
No? No luck?
ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. Friend. We have a look here.
Is it better?
Payaro.
He is my understudy.
Fairana.
ನರಸಿಂಹರಾವ್, sir.
Telagappa.
ಇಲ್ಲ sir, ಕನ್ನಡಿಗ.
ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. 2 language ಒರೇ script.
I just love that scene. So he said it's 2. I want you to watch this dude on the third one in this list.
In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1.
Let's watch him.
2.
1. Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3. 3. 3.
3.
So notice how he changed his mind. He is willing to give the wrong answer because everybody around him gives the wrong answer. That's what we do. We're heavily influenced by what's around us, right? We're under strong influence. Is the audio better? No? No? All right, that's okay. Let's go to the next one. This is another experiment. Watch this.
Gentleman in the elevator now is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera stand. 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups. Here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door. Everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice, they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
Wow. Are we doomed? Because what you saw there is human psychology. We lose individual, how do you say that?
Individuality.
See, I've been so influenced, I don't even know how to say the word anymore. What's the word again? See that? Individuality, right? We're all so under pressure by the group. Are we really doomed? That is very scary to me. If I end up doing everything that everybody else does, what's going to become of my business, my company? Scary, isn't it? So this is extremely important. Tell me about your friends, I'll tell about you. Remember the famous words? That makes a huge difference. Who are your friends? And I use the word friend in a very liberal way here. I mean geeks, the guys I run around with every day, right? Who are my friends? Because if I run around with very smart people, then I'm raising my average, because if I'm going to be conformant and be influenced by the group I mingle with, I might as well mingle with a group of smart and intelligent people. When I work in a company, if I am the smartest person in the company, I quit. Why? If I'm the smartest person in the company, what is everybody else trying to do? trying to bring me down. They're all changing position in the elevator. I cannot afford to do that. So I want to work in a company where there are people who are smarter than me. So if I'm going to be conformant, I might as well conform with people who are smarter and raise the bar than being brought down. That's one of the things to think about. Who do you work with? So if it's not important to be employed, it's important to be employable. So it's extremely important to find the right type of people and the right type of company to work with. That's extremely important. So surround yourselves with the smartest of people that you can find. And if you don't find them around where you are, don't walk to the next company, run. You cannot afford to waste your time. Life is too short for that. We also are influenced by practices. This is another thing we have to contend with, unfortunately. You know what that is, right? The rocket boosters. What do you think is the width of the rocket booster? You have an idea?
No.
That's a good answer, no. The width of the rocket booster is the width of the train track. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah? You're curious why?
Probably it's used to, is it a transport?
Bingo. He's really good. The first few, hey, I didn't ask you questions. Okay, so the very first few, and there's a reason I brought him here. He will ask you questions you can answer. The very first few rocket boosters they built, they had to put them on a train and ship them through the mountains of Utah. So you're absolutely right. The train tracks decided the size of the booster.
Oh, good.
Good. He's happy. Who decided the size of the train track? Well, the first few train tracks in the US were built by the English people. So they decide the size of the train track. Fair enough. Why did the English people decide the size of the train track? That's the next question. That's because they used tools that the Romans used. This goes really way back. What did the Romans do? They were on chariots, right? So the tools they used to build the chariots is the tools they built to the train, and so that's how they used it. And what decided the size of the chariot? Anybody? The horse's butt. Now think about this. The size of the boosters were decided by not horse's butt, by Roman horse's butt. Makes me feel sick. So we are influenced by people and we are influenced by practices. This is why we write C code in C++, C++ code in Java, Java code in, pick your language, right? Gosh. So this is a problem we have to avoid. We have to avoid the so-called representation lock-in. And this happens all the time. Somebody has done this over 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 days ago, doesn't matter. I know this works over there, so it's got to work over here. So we're heavily influenced by these practices, and that's something we got to be careful with. So one of the things to do is to ask why. You should ask why. Peter Senge says in this book, you got to ask why at least 5 times. There's a story of BMW getting a request for a car manufacturing windshield, and the requirement said the windshield should withstand 150 miles an hour wind speed. That doesn't make sense, right? The rear window, 150 miles an hour wind speed. So the engineer goes to his boss and says, this doesn't make sense, does it? And the boss says, that's stupid. Nobody drives in reverse at 150 miles an hour, not even in New York City. So 30 miles an hour is enough. So they make the first set of cars with 30 miles an hour windshield, the rear windshield. They ship it, and as soon as the cars arrive at the destination, they get a call. All the car windows, rear windows were broken. Now they said, really? Why? Because the cars were shipped in a train facing reverse. And the train was traveling at 150 miles an hour. So it's a good idea to ask why. And Peterson says you got to ask why 5 times. Why? Because the first time you get a lame reason. The second time you say why. And then you get another reason. And about the 5th time you get the real underlying answer. But I got an advice for you, my friend. I want you to ask why most of the time, not all the time. I never ask why when my wife says, let's go shopping. I just say, yes, ma'am, and I follow her. Okay? So I don't want you to take this to the heart and follow every time, okay? I'm looking out for you. So the fallacies I've faced, some of the fallacies I've faced is, more time and money will solve our problems. This is a common fallacy. You probably hear this all the time. Let's talk about this for a minute. Here is a book which is a scary book to read. This is a book somebody said is like a Stephen King book for programmers. This is a book that talks about a project called Chandler, and this was Mitch Kapur. He had a lot of money. This guy is the guy who wrote Lotus Notes, and he made billions of dollars. So he had infinite amount of money. He had no time schedule, and he could hire the best programmers in the world, and he did. Would you think that's a dream project? No time limit, no budget limit, you can have all the people in the world.
Dream project.
The dream project. And what happened to this project? It failed. You know, how could a project like that fail? Because the programmers got together, they started writing code, and as soon as they get something working, Mitch would say, hey, I don't like it, let's go for the next big thing. I want to do something the world has never seen. And the programmers got tired and they left. He would hire a new set of programmers and they would get tired and leave. And I said, this book is scary and very frustrating. You're reading this book and literally your heart is pounding. And you're reading this book and you're like, please, please, you wouldn't do that, don't do it. And you flip the page and they are having a meeting about why the meeting is not working. Very scary, very frustrating book. So what this says is, we cannot simply run a project by giving a lot of time and money. This is a very scary picture from Craig Lorman's book. He talks about relevance. This says only about 20% of the features of a project gets actually used. 65% of the features, nobody cares. Now that's scary, right? Why? Because you spend all the time and money and the deadline pressure building what nobody uses. You say, hey, if you use 20%, aren't you still happy? Well, the 65% that you build stops you from getting your work done. When you have to extend the code, you're like, oh, I don't want to touch the piece of you know what, right? So we spend a lot of time and money building stuff nobody needs. This is very scary. I used to work for a company, I cannot give the name here, and I joined the company 3 years after they started the project. And I worked with them for 4 years. That's been 7 years now. At the end of 4 years, I just quit and I left. And they went on with this project for 3 more years. So there was a total of 10 years when they did absolutely no release. They built this product for 10 years and they spent $12 million. So 3 years after I quit, I called up my colleague and I was talking to her and I said, how are things? And she said, oh, I'm working on this other project. I said, wow, that is great news. You guys shipped the project we worked on, right? And there was a little silence in the phone. I said, excuse me, hello? And she said, well, we didn't ship it. We shelved it. You know software lifecycle, right? Have you seen shelving in that? Yes? He worked for that company, I think. I'm like, shelving? What is shelving? Those are called euphemism. What is euphemism? Is where you say a bad thing in a nice way. It doesn't feel that bad anymore. Remember, once upon a time, you would go to somebody and say, he's stupid. But that's not politically correct anymore. You don't call people stupid, do you?
No, I don't.
You say, he's interesting. You don't go to your boss and say, hey, boss, I have a problem. No, you should never do that. You go to your boss and say, boss, I have a challenge. And for some reason, interesting people have challenges to deal with. Yeah? So, I'm like, They trashed it. $12 million, and 10 years later, they trashed it. You can see that I'm angry, right? He says, Venkat, didn't you get paid working on this project? Why are you so angry? Well, I got paid all right, but I spent weekends and nights not going home because I was working on an important project. Honey, I can't come home tonight working on this important project. You know how I feel, right?
Yes.
If all that I wanted was money, they could have called each one of the programmers and said, here's $200,000 for you, go home. And the company would have still saved $10 million. So yes, I made the money, but who wants to work on a project that never got shipped? Imagine I'm in an interview. What is your success story? We shelved projects. No. This is a very scary picture. This says, if you make no releases at all, to begin with, your project has 60% chance of success. As time goes on, at the end of 36 months, remember what I said, I interviewed them 3 years after they started the project. I was dumb those days. Had I known this in the interview, I would have said, don't hire me, you guys are screwed. So the project was dead on arrival, my arrival. And I worked on a dead project for 4 years. You know how I feel about that? Did not know that. So it's important to make multiple releases continuously, but why? And the reason simply is this. You keep on spending money and spending money and spending money. What about small companies, startups? Can they spend money for 7 years? They go bankrupt. What about big companies? Big companies have bigger pockets. What does bigger pocket allow you to do? To be stupid. And a lot of big companies are stupid. They keep spending money and spending money. No company can spend money, no organization can spend money forever without consequences, except the US government. No other organization can spend money forever. So this is unsustainable. It's impossible to sustain this model. But you work on this for about 6 months. At the end of 6 months, you release, and people are like, what's up with this? Like, oops, never mind. We won't release this. We'll take the people and put them on another project. I would much rather fail after $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 than $12 million. But at the end of 6 months, people like it, then what happens? What they want me to build is not what I had envisioned to build. My customers influence something else that I have to build. And so I end up building something that is, what do you think? Relevant to the marketplace, right? Here's another fallacy. It's got to be good because it's from a large vendor. I cry at this point in the meetings. I've heard this several times. I'm sure you've heard it too, right? Absolutely. So there's this interesting book called The Paradox of Choice. You would say, in a free society, we need to have more choices. This book says the other way around. He says, the more choices we have, the more confused we are. This is very common in the Java community, right? What web framework do you use? Don't answer that question. What language do you use? Don't answer that question. Because we got choices, too many choices to make, and the result is confusion. Well, here's an interesting thing. I would like to buy a Vista, please. No problem. Which one would you like? Microsoft Vista, Windows Vista Home Basic Upgrade, Vista Home Premium Upgrade. I'm sorry, I can't read that list anymore. And then the list goes on. And the guy finally is like, wow, I got choices. Which one do you recommend? How many of you here use Eclipse? Keep your hand up, please. Keep your hand up if you'll pay $500 to use it. I won't even go there. Why do things get so complicated? You're using some framework, it is beautiful, and then over a few years it gets really complicated. We got to blame somebody, would you agree?
Oh, okay.
All right, see, he's all for it. Absolutely, he said, that's what I do at work every day. Sure. So let's blame somebody. Whom should we blame? I'm going to blame you. You over there. And I stand here, she blames me too. It's like,
everybody else.
She's like, I didn't come here to get blamed this morning. What was I doing? Happily walking on the streets. Why should I come and take insult here? Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you why I should blame you. I'm sure you have used a software, right? And you tell your colleague, hey, I used this particular tool. It worked really well. What does your colleague do? Goes to the website, looks at the website, and says, huh, the last time they updated this was in 2006. The bits are not warm. It's old, 4 years old. We won't use it, right? You want things that are up to date. It's 4 years old. I don't want to use it. So what do vendors do? Vendors say, we got to somehow keep these bits warm. So we'll keep making release after release after release. You got to understand, after some point, you're just going to mess it up. But why do they mess it up? Because you want that to be warm. So that's why it's your fault. Right? So we cause this problem. I call this the molding colossus problem. They are doomed if they stop. They are doomed if they continue. So we cause part of the pain. And Ganesh is like, come on, I didn't come here to get blamed. I'll take part of the blame. Right? He says, before breakfast, I got blamed already at home. There's only so much blame I can take, right? No problem. The other problem is design by committee just sucks. That's the fact of life. A camel is a horse designed by committee, says Sir Alexander. So what's up with this? Unemotionally ask the question, why did EJB 1.0 suck so bad? The answer is very simple. Nobody had a real need for it. They got together and said, Microsoft has MTS, we got to do another TLA. TLA stands for three-letter acronym. So, EJB. So, standardization before innovation is a bad idea. I'm all for standardization, by the way. I love standardization. But standardization before innovation is a bad idea. What we need to do is, first we should innovate. Go get at it. Do something with it. Once you innovate, find real use for it, then go standardize it and market it. Is this really possible? Can anybody do this? Absolutely. These guys did it. The Rails guys did not go create a standard. They got around doing their own stuff, and look, this works. It doesn't solve the world's problem, but it solves our problem. And then they standardized it. You say, hey, wait a minute, this is Java talk. Why do you talk about Rails? Okay, fine. Here's another one for you. That's exactly where Spring came from. Spring is an innovation first and standardization later. So yes, it is possible. This is a model that works, so don't standardize until you innovate what you do. Here's another fallacy you come up with work. You get all excited, you listen to dynamic languages today, you go to work, and one of your dudes will say, oh, dynamic languages are not safe. They'll try to tell you that this is not a good thing to do. So these are the words of the captain of Titanic. I cannot imagine any condition which could cause a ship to founder. I cannot conceive of any vital disaster happening to this vessel. Modern shipbuilding has gone beyond that. And we know what happened to Titanic. Java is your Titanic. I wrote about this in my book, Programming Groovy. There's a misconception about and confusion about dynamic languages and weak typing. And I want to set that aside for a minute and say, we got to be careful when we say strong typing versus static typing. Static typing is where a compiler does the checking. Dynamic typing is where either there is no compiler or the compiler is very liberal, very lenient. Orthogonal to that completely is strong typing where at runtime it says, is this the object you're expecting? And weak typing is where it doesn't. One of the greatest example of a weakly typed static language is C++. Have you programmed in C++?
No.
No. Anybody programmed in C++ before? Quite a few of us, right? What happens in C++ if you cast an object to a wrong type? That's the right answer. You don't have a clue. I'll tell you, this is one of the reasons why C++ programmers are always excited. They want to go to work and find out what this program does today. It's unpredictable. It depends on whether a memory has been laid out properly. If there's a V table, gosh, I want to see what it does today. Java, on the other hand, is strongly typed and statically typed. You cast to a wrong thing, you bypass the compiler, you get what? Class cast exception. Groovy and Ruby are dynamic but strong. You get class cast exception in them too. So I'm not going to tell you compilers are not useful. They are useful, but their use is often overrated. They cannot provide absolute safety, and static typing doesn't mean it is better. Here's a question for you, Anish. What is 2.0 minus 1.1?
0.9.
0.9. Let's see if he's true. He's right. So let's try. So here is Java. Hello, Java. 2.0 minus 1.1. Are you ready? .8999999. Let's see what Groovy has to say. Groovy is another language on the JVM, right? So here I'm on Groovy. Print line 2.0 minus 1.1. Let's run this. And what does Groovy say? He knows it. And where does Groovy run? On exactly the same virtual machine that Java is running. Tell me, you're curious, right? Yes. How can Groovy do this? Well, let's ask Groovy. Hey, Groovy, what's your secret to life? So let's do this. 2.0.class. Groovy, what do you have? Haha. He is using big decimal. At this time, what will the Java programmer do? The Java programmer will say, we can do that too, right? So let's do this in Java, right? Can we do that? So let's go back to Java and say, Java, we're going to use big decimal. So let's go write that here. Output, new big decimal. Did you hear that? He sneezed. That's a bad omen. 2.0 dot subtract new big decimal 1.1. Wow. How much code? I'm going to run this, but before I run it, how long has Java been around?
About
14, 15 years. Do you have kids?
Yes.
Are they about that age?
No.
Good. Anybody with teenage kids here? A few of us? Yeah, they don't raise their hands in public. They're like, we came here to forget that. Why would you remind us of that? What happens when kids turn teenage? They're stupid, right? Between 11 and 18, you just bite your tongue and wait for them to...
Unpredictable.
Yeah, you want them to upgrade, yeah. So just be kind, okay? Just be kind. So what am I doing here? I'm going to run this code. And what does Java say? Run this. So Java says, okay, this has got to be fixed. We don't want people to leave this room thinking this won't work. So you say double quote, and then you say here double quote, and then you run this code. And just like a teenager, Java is like, okay, fine. What do you think? Pretty crazy, isn't it? Scary, right? Very scary. So should we really go through that amount of ceremony in doing things? He's like, oh, but static typing, what about static typing? Let's try this. Static typing is good, right? So let's go back here, and I want to say over here, I want to create an array list. So array list, let's say integer, and I'm going to simply create, list equals new array list, and then of integer. So there we go, we created that. And what do I do now? I'm going to say list.add 1. Works, right? List.add 1.0. Do you think I can do that? No, not at all. But what do smart programmers do? They say, let's try this. Array list equals list dot add 1.0. When you run this code, what will happen? Bad things will happen. It did not give you type safety at all. But this is even worse than what you had before. Why? Because you did not say integer once, you said it twice now. If you say things many times to somebody and they still don't get it, what do you tell them? So languages have become overly protective. It has dumbed us down and has lowered our productivity. We deserve better. Here is a very interesting place to visit. This is called a Royal Gorge in Colorado. And what you see here is a beautiful river, Arkansas. And there's a bridge on the top. And from the top to the bottom, it is 1,000 feet. What's that in meters?
About 333.
About 300 meters. You would say, my God, that place is so beautiful, Venkat. You would have been mesmerized by the place, right? I wish I could say yes. What caught my attention was not this beauty. What caught my attention was that place at the very top over there, at the very, very top. You see that? That place. You know what I saw over there, Ganesh?
No fishing.
I was shocked. Let's try this. That's 1,000 feet in the bottom. It's dead on arrival, even if you got to it. I would put a board, you idiot, try fishing. This is the world we live in. Scary, right?
Funny.
Very scary. Then you will hear a developer say, well, but modern IDE is completely obviate the need to type Java syntax manually. So you could look at this piece of art. Have you ever tried to explain Java to somebody? Yeah, see, he has done it and never do that again. Try doing this. Hey, what are you doing? Writing the clone method. Really? You're writing the clone method? Yep. Then why are you throwing clone not supported? At some point you say, either you can be logical or you can program in Java, but not both. How does it feel? I'll tell you how it feels for me. That's how that feels for me. So I want you to think about this. What do you want to do when you go to work? You want to pull strings or you want to be productive?
Want to be productive.
He wants to be productive, he says. The audio is off again. Sorry. That's what you want to do at work, right? Get to what you want to do real quick and not just play all those stunts. I would rather write groovy code in VI than Java code in IDE. That's my good friend Neil Ford. And here's even better. High ceremony code damns you twice. It's hard to maintain it, and it needs more maintenance. Google for this, essence versus ceremony, and you'll read a beautiful article, blog entry by Stuart Halloway. Google for essence over ceremony. Great ideas often receive violent opposition from mediocre minds, is the words of Albert Einstein. So what I ask you to do is, don't fear. Don't fear to try new things. Don't fear to make mistakes. This is one of the biggest problems, I think, is people are afraid to make mistakes. If you make small mistakes, You learn quickly. We should make a lot of mistakes. And don't be afraid to push your boundaries. I want to emphasize that point again. A professional who doesn't learn to fail fails to learn. 10 minutes more. I was going to finish in 1 minute. Is that okay with you? All right. So, a professional who doesn't learn to fail fails to learn. It's very important for us to fail. We want to fail in very, very, very small steps. Look at a 7-month-old baby. What does a 7-month-old baby do all day?
Try to walk.
Keeps falling down and trying to walk. And what does the baby do when the baby falls down? Gets up and walks. Provided you don't say, baby, you fell down. Then it starts crying. Just leave it alone. And the baby is like, gets up and walks around, falls down. And if I stumble walking here, I feel embarrassed. Oh my goodness. And how did that happen? Somewhere between 7 months and our age, we started fearing failure. So we should never we should never fear failing, because if you fail in small portions, you can succeed big deal. If you protect yourself from small failures, you have a colossal failure later on. You don't want to do that. So give things unbiased consideration, give ideas a fair chance, go try them out, experiment. We're in a field where we can try things. You can write stupid code. If it works, you check it in. If it doesn't, kick it out. Nothing to lose. We have the power of prototyping and playing with it. We have nothing to lose, not even time, because we learn and get better when we do it. Shun mediocrity, but be unemotional. There's a difference between being unemotional and indifferent. We got to be unemotional in what we do and make technical decisions. So here's the words of Robert Kennedy. He says, every time we turn our head the other way, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, when we close our eyes and ears because we are too busy or too frightened, when we fail to speak up and speak out, we strike a blow against freedom and decency and justice, and I would add, professionalism. So it's our moral obligation to really try things and improve ourselves and improve people around us. So let's act like champions. Let's practice like champions. Let's play like champions. Let's be champions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My intention is not to be agnostic at all. I think it's extremely important for us to really not follow the path to mediocrity. That's what scares me the most. And what do corporations want us to do? They want to be cookie cutters. They want us to repeat a repeatable process. And in the process, what we do is, well, this is a debate to have. One question is, do I want to have a very large team of average to below average people, or do I want to have a smaller team of extremely talented individuals who can get the work done? And it really depends on what our objective function is. If my objective function is just revenue growth for my company, I would want to have a lot of people doing poor quality job. Then I can sell those services and get more money. But if my objective function is to really be productive and make my clients win, and in the process win myself, then it's going to be a very different way. And this is what scares me the most, is when corporations want us to follow standard practices. And what becomes a standard, by the time it becomes a standard, has become a bit obsolete by the time. You know, this is very scary because we hear people tell us constantly we are in a field that changes all the time. But I think that's true and not true at the same time. The field changes, but not the people. A new wave of people come and pick up stuff, and then they settle down. And when something else comes in, it's another set of people who pick it up. And you can still see people programming in a lot of different languages and frameworks because they're so comfortable with it. So it's really, I'm not really interested in what corporations should do. I'm more interested in the professionalism and the responsibilities of an individual programmer. Once we build that, I think we can build better companies, I think. So no, my intention is not to be agnostic about it. Please.
Suppose I already have an application that's built on Java J2E technology, and then you suggest Groovy is better. So how would I, an existing existing application being used by customers, how would I experiment with Groovy and introduce this new language into the existing application?
So the question she asked is, I've got an existing application using a lot of proven technologies. How do I possibly learn Groovy or any other language or framework, whatever, and how would I use it in an existing product? That's a question. There are a couple of things to think about. The first thing is, I would never suggest going and changing existing products to use newer things. That's not pragmatic. However, just because you're maintaining and building an existing application doesn't mean you don't learn. Thomas Huxley's words that I cherish a lot. Thomas Huxley said, you should learn everything about something and something about everything. You are an expert in what you do, but not at the cost of being ignorant about a lot of other things. So one of the things we should do, this is a personal investment, is every day you devote 20 to 30 minutes of your time doing something that's absolutely useless. And eventually that becomes useful. I would go to work, and we all know what the life of a programmer is. I'm a person who goes to work early. I would go to work very early in the morning, and as soon as I get into work, there's fires to put out. Late in the night, I'm leaving. And that's not going to help me. That is a model of a candle. What happens when you take a candle? You put the candle, you light it, and you say, wow, what a beautiful candle. It gives so much light to this place. And the candle is slowly being burned, and the candle is gone. Do you say, that was the greatest candle I had, I will live in darkness from now on? Before even it goes out, you put the next one. You and I are that candle in the corporate world. You're burning yourselves every day. And when you're burnt up, there's somebody else replacing you, as they would for me, right? So it is for you to charge and recharge yourself, and so you need to find the discipline. I'll tell you what I do. I would take lunchtime, and I would get together and geek out. The friends you run out with. I would sit down as I eat lunch, I would be talking to guys about technology. What do you do? What do you know? What do you do? How does that work? We want to go try. And there's a time every weekend I would devote to go look at something that I've not looked at. Going to conferences like this. You will hear so much. That takes you several fold of advancement that on your own would take several hours, if not days and weeks. You hear a lot of things. That is a way, that's an active learning. You go to user groups. I was in Agile Bangalore group yesterday night. There are some groups like that. You should take the discipline to go there. And you go to these groups, they give you free food. You listen to somebody talk. How could this go wrong? And you do the active learning, and the next time you have something that you can use on a new piece of code, you could. Or you have a new project coming up. Hey, I know something about it. It is not what you know, it is what you can know that makes the difference. So that is how I would do. No, my goal is not to change existing code. It is to really move forward with it. How much time do we have still? One more question? Excellent. One more question. Yes, please.
Thank you, Venkat, for this nice session. I've been I think one of the main goals for you is all the Java developers who are actually going for Java, they can try the new languages, Groovy or Ruby. In fact, Neil Ford, I have been going through his blog, and I've been going through Neil's Ford blog, and I think he's a strong proponent of Ruby language. And certainly Ruby is in my wish list. I want to go through it. But one thing that really, I want to know as of now is, okay, apart from the typing, type saving that Ruby actually does, what it claims to be, what actually the language feature
Sure.
that actually you can say that, okay, Ruby has this which Java cannot have, and from the language feature point of view, what is exactly that Ruby has an edge over it?
This is a difference between a night and a day. The question is, what is compelling? I don't want to use Ruby or Groovy because it is dynamically typed, right? What it can do for me is meta-programming. Think about this for a minute. I want to say stir equals hello. I want to print the string. And I'm just printing the string out here, but I want to say print stir dot shout. I want this string to scream. Java programmers, is there a shout method? No. It says method missing. Imagine now what I'm going to do. I go back over here and say string.metaclass.shout equals, and what do I do now? I'm going to simply say here to uppercase. This is just a little example, right? So I wrote a method called to uppercase, and I'm running this, and you're asking me, excuse me, did you just change Java lang string? Yes, I did. You mean the sacred Java lang string? Well, the last time I checked, we live in a free country. It's our code. That's metaprogramming. I'm just giving you a scratch of a surface, but go to Scott Davis's talk. He'll tell you all about the fun of this language, right? So metaprogramming is the beauty and the essence, and everything else is secondary to me. And metaprogramming gives me method injection, but more important, method synthesis. And what does that do? Method synthesis allows me to write less code because I could look at a certain data pattern, like a command pattern, and I can synthesize the method, and I change the data format. I don't have to rewrite the code. It gets resynthesized. More productivity for me and for my company as well. So that is the essence. But what you did is the exact right thing to do is to ask why. Why should I use it? Because you want to be convinced, and once you are convinced, you can convince the people around you. So thank you very much for the time.